it's definitely a difficult decision. When do you split a service? You want to have a new feature. When do you create a new service for it versus when do you build it into an existing service? And you want to strike that balance kind of well so that you don't have huge bloated software, but you also don't want tons of different services that inevitably will all be operated slightly differently, and you'll have to think about them slightly differently for people to have to manage. So the way that we thought about it in general was we can make, as I said in the talk, we can make some relatively small changes that are abstracted well and easy to think about in order to take this database that people are already comfortable with, these interfaces that people in the company are already comfortable with, and add these new guarantees or these different kinds of modes into it. And I think that ended up being kind of the most productive thing, both for our team and for Twitter. Well, I think one of the things that we did right is we really took an iterative approach. We did things that we knew would scale to the levels that we needed them to scale at the beginning, and then over time we improved the software to keep growing. The base components were done right at the start, so that we knew that we would be able to grow and we wouldn't code ourselves into a corner. Some of the challenges, there were certainly organizational challenges in getting a big multi-tenant service with lots of different customers in the company, being able to track the growth of this service and the different customers and their different needs properly. And we definitely grew around that in order to kind of provide the best velocity for development at Twitter. In terms of scaling the database, making architectural changes like adding a new backend at scale takes a long time to do correctly, to build confidence in. And so one of the biggest challenges is building something that's general enough for all of our different use cases to be able to use, or at least a majority of them, while still being efficient and while still delivering at a good rate. One of the nice things about Manhattan is that it's multi-tenant. So even I don't know all of the customers that we have on it. We certainly have the really big customers inside the company, the tweet store, the DMs, advertisers, users, metadata for our static asset store. There's lots of different big customers. And then there's also a really long tail of small customers, people who just are starting a new feature, they need to store some data somewhere, and they can really easily set up a new data set and throw some data into Manhattan. Yeah, so it's not open source now. And one of the reasons that it's not open source is because we really took advantage of Twitter's infrastructure and the things that we had available to us. So we use Zookeeper and we use Aurora, and we have this ecosystem around the actual technology of just the database to make it easy for people to use. And a lot of those we view as really integral to the system. In order for us to open source it, we just need to do the work to open source it in a way that we feel comfortable that people will actually be getting value out of it. That's something that we want to do eventually, but it's something that we need to hire more people for so that we can prioritize that work correctly. The way a lot of people end up learning distributed systems nowadays, at least most of the people I know, it's not really taught it hasn't been taught at least at the level that we're operating in school. So people learn through experience. I think there's a lot of really great seminal papers out there that deeply explain, especially white papers that come from companies that deeply explain both the kind of theory of how it works and a bit of the practice about, in reality, like why these decisions are made and what are the things that we do to get around them and what are the things that we're getting out of it. So I think exposing yourself to the literature is good. And then just try to get working on, there's lots of open source distributed databases that you can learn and try to run and work on. I think one of the things that influenced us heavily was that we were operating the same systems that we were building. And so we really deeply felt what was good and what was bad about these systems and how that we should improve them. And so if you don't take just an academic approach, but a real world approach to distributed systems, I think it results in a lot of success. Jay on the Beach is great. The city is great. The venue is great. And what motivated me was that the goal of the conference really kind of meshed with what I think is important and what I want to see at these kinds of conferences, which is distributed systems in practice that people can take something home from and learn. And I like that a lot. And also the caliber of the speakers has been really excellent.